What if humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology, warfare, or intelligence, but something so fundamentally terrifying to advanced civilizations that they chose to pretend we never existed at all? For 3,000 years, Earth has sent signals into space. For 3,000 years, we've searched for answers to one burning question. Are we alone? But what if the real question should have been, why is everyone hiding from us? When Captain Sarah Chun discovers that Earth exists in a cosmic blind spot, deliberately erased from every galactic map, every trade route, every communication network, she uncovers a conspiracy that spans millennia. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations have spent eons maintaining one simple rule: never acknowledge the third planet from Sol. But some rules are meant to be broken. And when humanity finally demands answers, the galaxy will learn why they were so afraid of us in the first place. Captain Sarah Chun pressed her palm against the cold viewport of the UES horizon, watching the swirling nebula paint the darkness in shades of purple and gold. 3 years into humanity's deepest space expedition, and still nothing. No signals, no structures, no signs that intelligence had ever touched this corner of the galaxy. Another dead system, muttered Dr. James Rodriguez, the expedition's xenobiologist, as he slumped into the chair beside her. His dark eyes held the same exhaustion that plagued them all. That makes 47 sterile worlds in a row. Sarah didn't respond immediately. Her fingers traced patterns on the glass as she watched their destination grow larger. A blue-white star with 12 planets, 3 of which sat perfectly within the habitable zone. Every algorithm, every predictive model they developed screamed that this system should be teeming with life. Yet their long-range sensors detected nothing but empty worlds and lifeless rock. "The mathematics don't lie, James," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This galaxy should be crawling with civilizations. We've confirmed over 4 billion potentially habitable worlds just in our local galactic arm. Even if only one in a million developed intelligent life, we should be surrounded by thousands of advanced species. Maybe we're just looking in the wrong places." Sarah turned away from the viewport, her reflection ghosting across the surface. A woman in her early 40s with prematurely gray hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights spent questioning humanity's cosmic isolation. "No, James. We've been methodical. We've followed every signal, investigated every anomaly, traced every pattern that our model suggested. It's not that we're looking in the wrong places." She paused, the weight of her next words settling heavily in the air between them. "It's that something is fundamentally wrong." The bridge of the horizon hummed with quiet activity as the night shift maintained their course toward the unnamed system. Sarah had handpicked her crew of 200, the best scientists, engineers, and explorers humanity had to offer. They'd spent 5 years in deep space, pushing further from Earth than any human had ever traveled, driven by one burning question: why was humanity alone? Dr. Elena Vasquez, their chief physicist. "At first, I thought we were just experiencing statistical bad luck. But then I started looking at the broader patterns." The display shifted, showing a wider view of the galactic arm. Sarah's breath caught as she noticed something that shouldn't have been possible: a perfect circular void in the distribution of what their sensors had identified as potentially inhabited worlds. "This is impossible," James breathed, moving closer to the display. "It's like someone drew a circle around our entire solar system and marked it as off-limits." Elena nodded grimly. "The radius is approximately 50 light-years from Earth. Every system within that boundary appears to be either genuinely uninhabitable or mysteriously vacant despite meeting all the criteria for supporting life." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she studied the pattern. The mathematical precision was undeniable, too precise to be natural. How many systems are we talking about? Within our local bubble? 43 systems that should show signs of intelligent life based on our models, but register as completely sterile. Outside that radius? Elena manipulated the display again, revealing dozens of bright markers indicating electromagnetic signatures consistent with advanced civilizations. The galaxy is exactly as crowded as our models predicted it should be. The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the distant thrum of the ship's engines. Sarah stared at the display, her mind racing through the implications. 43 empty systems couldn't be a coincidence, especially when arranged in such a perfect pattern around Earth. "Captain," called Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb from a navigation station. "We're receiving something. It's unusual." Sarah turned toward the communication section, where Webb was frowning at his displays. "Define unusual, Marcus." "It's a broadcast, but not directed at us. We're picking up the edge of what seems to be a very powerful transmission beam. The signal is incredibly sophisticated, multiple frequency layers, quantum encryption, the works. It's definitely artificial and definitely not human." The excitement that Sarah felt was immediately tempered by confusion. "Source. That's the weird part. It's coming from the system we're approaching, but our sensors show no signs of inhabited planets or artificial structures." Elena moved to the communication station and began analyzing the incoming data. Her fingers flew across the controls as she attempted to decode the signal structure. "This is incredibly advanced," she murmured. "The information density is beyond anything we've developed. It would take our best quantum computers months to crack even a fragment of this encryption." Sarah felt her heart racing. After 3 years of searching, they had finally found proof of intelligent life. But something about the situation felt wrong. Why were their sensors detecting no signs of civilization if something was clearly transmitting from that system? "Marcus, how long until we reach the outer edge of the system?" 18 hours at current velocity, Captain." Sarah nodded, her mind already formulating plans. "I want continuous monitoring of that signal. Elena, I need you to record everything and begin analysis immediately. Even if we can't decode it, we might be able to learn something about the technology creating it." As the crew focused on their new discovery, Sarah found herself drawn back to the viewport. "You're not going to like what I found." Sarah approached the physics station where Elena had multiple displays showing wave patterns, frequency analyses, and mathematical models. "Show me." The signal isn't random communication. It's highly structured, repetitive, and appears to be some kind of automated beacon or navigational marker. But here's the strange part. Based on the transmission pattern and beam direction, it seems to be marking this system as... Elena paused, double-checking her calculations. "As what, Elena?" "Empty. The signal appears to be broadcasting that this system contains no intelligent life and should be avoided by interstellar traffic." Sarah stared at the display, feeling pieces of a cosmic puzzle beginning to arrange themselves in her mind. But something is clearly broadcasting that signal. Something with incredibly advanced technology. Exactly. Which means we have a civilization sophisticated enough to maintain powerful automated systems, but they're actively trying to make their system appear uninhabited to outside observers. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. If one system was deliberately masking its existence, how many others might be doing the same? And, more importantly, why would advanced civilizations want to hide their presence? "Marcus," she called to the navigation station. "I want you to run a complete analysis of every signal we've detected in the past 3 years. Look for similar patterns, anything that might indicate artificial masking of inhabited systems." "Already on it, Captain. Elena asked me to start the analysis an hour ago." Webb's voice carried a note of excitement tinged with apprehension. "Preliminary results show at least 15 other systems that exhibit similar characteristics. Faint automated signals that seem designed to discourage investigation." Sarah felt her worldview shifting fundamentally. Humanity wasn't alone in the galaxy, and advanced civilizations weren't hiding from each other. They were hiding from something specific. They were hiding from Earth. "Elena, I need to know if there's any pattern to these masking signals. Are they all broadcasting the same basic message?" Elena's fingers danced across her controls as she pulled up comparative analyses of the various signals they detected. They're all different in terms of technical implementation, but the underlying message structure is remarkably consistent. Each one essentially broadcasts three pieces of information: system designation, inhabitability status, and a warning to avoid the area. What kind of warning? That's where it gets interesting. The warnings aren't about environmental hazards or system instability. They're about something called— Elena paused, checking her translation algorithms. The closest equivalent I can render in English would be contamination risk, or perhaps quarantine zone. Sarah felt ice water flowing through her veins. Quarantine from what? I don't know, Captain. But based on the signal strength and sophistication required to maintain these broadcasts, we're talking about a galaxy-wide coordination effort involving dozens of advanced civilizations. They're all working together to maintain the illusion that large portions of space are empty and should be avoided. The bridge crew had gradually gathered around the physics station as word spread about their discoveries. Sarah looked at their faces: excitement, fear, anticipation, and determination mixed together in expressions she'd never seen before. They were witnessing the confirmation of humanity's greatest hope and perhaps its greatest nightmare. Captain, Dr. Rodriguez spoke up from where he'd been quietly analyzing biological data. I've been thinking about the patterns we're seeing. If these civilizations are maintaining active concealment protocols, there has to be a reason. Something significant enough to justify the massive resource expenditure required for galaxy-wide coordination. Sarah nodded slowly. What are you thinking, James? I'm thinking about Earth's position at the center of this bubble of apparently empty space. We're exactly 50 light-years from the nearest systems that show signs of hidden civilizations. That's not coincidence. That's deliberate distancing. Elena looked up from her calculations. He's right, Captain. 50 light-years is significant from a galactic perspective. It's far enough to prevent casual detection of Earth's emissions. James, start running comparative models on what makes Earth unique from other worlds in our galactic region. Sarah moved to the center of the bridge, feeling the weight of command and the significance of their discovery. Everyone understand, we're no longer just exploring empty space. We're about to make first contact with civilizations that have been actively hiding from us. She paused, looking each crew member in the eye. And we're going to find out why they were so afraid of us that they convinced an entire galaxy to pretend we don't exist. The UES Horizon surged forward through space, carrying 200 humans toward their destiny and toward answers that would fundamentally change their understanding of their place in the universe. Behind them, Earth continued its orbit around an unremarkable yellow star, unaware that its children were about to discover why the galaxy feared them. In the depths of space around them, automated beacons continued their ancient broadcasts, warning all who would listen to avoid the quarantine zone around Sol, to pretend that the third planet from that star held nothing but empty rock and lifeless oceans. But pretending was about to become impossible. The UES Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, and immediately every sensor on the ship began screaming warnings that made no sense. Captain Sarah Chun gripped the armrest of her command chair as she watched impossible readings flood the main display. "Report," she commanded, though her voice came out tighter than she intended. Lieutenant Commander Webb's hands flew across his navigation controls, his face pale in the blue glow of the displays. "Captain, our sensors are detecting massive artificial structures throughout the system, but our visual spectrum shows nothing but empty space. The gravitational readings suggest at least 40 major installations, including what appears to be a ring structure around the primary star." Dr. Elena Vasquez rushed to her physics station, her equipment providing a flood of conflicting data. "The electromagnetic signatures are incredible," she called out. "I'm reading power generation levels that would require the total energy output of multiple stars, but our optical sensors show only planets and asteroids." Sarah felt her breath catch as the implications hit her. "They're not just hiding from us. They're using technology to make themselves completely invisible to our detection methods. Captain, Dr. Rodriguez's voice carried a note of awe and terror as he analyzed the biological readings from their sensors. The life signs are, Captain, I'm reading population levels in the trillions across multiple worlds in this system. Complex ecosystem interactions, massive urban heat signatures, atmospheric composition consistent with industrial civilizations. But according to our visual and standard sensor arrays, those worlds are barren rock. The bridge fell silent, except for the constant stream of alerts from their detection systems. Sarah stared at the main display where their computers were attempting to reconcile two completely contradictory sets of data. One showing a system teeming with incredibly advanced life, the other showing empty worlds orbiting a solitary star. Elena, is there any chance our equipment is malfunctioning? Elena's response came quickly. I've run full diagnostics 3 times. All systems are functioning normally. The readings are accurate. Captain, we're looking at a civilization so technologically advanced that they can selectively control what different types of sensors detect, meaning they want us to see exactly what they choose to show us, Sarah concluded. The chess game they'd stumbled into was far more complex than she'd imagined. Marcus, take us deeper into the system. I want to see what happens when we get closer to those hidden structures. As the horizon moved inward, the automated signal they'd been tracking grew stronger. Elena had managed to decode portions of it during their approach, revealing a message that was both simple and chilling. Solar System Designation 847 Delta. Classification: Quarantine Zone. Status: Uninhabited. Warning: Approach prohibited due to contamination protocols. Contamination protocols, Sarah murmured, reviewing Elena's translation work. They're not just hiding from us. They're treating our entire solar system like it carries some kind of plague. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from his biological analysis station. Captain, I've been thinking about that. What if the contamination isn't biological? What if it's something else entirely? Before Sarah could we're requesting information about the quarantine protocols you mentioned. The response came after a long pause, during which Sarah imagined frantic discussions taking place among beings she couldn't even visualize. Earth vessel, your presence in this system constitutes a severe breach of containment. You must return to your designated quarantine zone immediately. Any further expansion beyond your system's boundaries will result in enforcement action. Elena was frantically working to analyze the communication signal, trying to determine its origin point within the system. Captain, the transmission is coming from the ring structure around the star. The power levels required for that signal suggest a construct larger than Earth's orbit. Sarah felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Humanity's first contact with alien civilization, and they were being treated like escaped prisoners. Unknown vessel. We are not familiar with any quarantine protocols. We've received no communication from galactic authorities regarding restrictions on our movement. We're simply explorers seeking knowledge and peaceful contact. Another long pause. When the response came, the artificial voice carried what sounded almost like confusion. Earth vessel. Your species was designated as contained approximately 3,000 Earth years ago, following the Consensus Declaration. All civilizations within a 50 light-year radius of your system were relocated or provided with concealment technology to prevent contamination events. Your continued presence beyond your quarantine zone was not anticipated. Dr. Rodriguez moved to Sarah's side, keeping his voice low. Captain, 3,000 years ago puts this right around the time humanity developed agriculture and began forming complex civilizations. Sarah nodded grimly. Whatever had made humanity dangerous to the galaxy had been identified during their early development as a species. Unknown vessel. We have no knowledge of this consensus declaration. Can you explain what contamination risk our species is believed to pose? The pause this time was even longer. Sarah could almost sense the debate taking place among beings who had never expected to have this conversation. Earth vessel. Direct communication regarding contamination protocols is prohibited under Galactic Accord 77 Alpha. However, given the unprecedented nature of your breach, We are authorized to provide limited historical context. Elena looked up from her analysis station, her eyes wide with excitement and terror. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy spikes throughout the system. Whatever they're doing, it's requiring enormous amounts of power. Your species exhibits cognitive patterns that are considered highly dangerous to galactic stability, the alien voice continued. 3,000 years ago, human thought processes were analyzed by the galactic consensus, and the decision was made to implement complete containment rather than risk exposure to other civilizations. Sarah felt anger flaring in her chest. What cognitive patterns? What makes human thinking dangerous? This information cannot be provided under current protocols. You must return to your quarantine zone immediately. No. Sarah's response came out harder than she intended. We've traveled 3 years to get here. We've spent centuries wondering if we're alone in the universe. And now we discover that an entire galaxy has been hiding from us. We're not leaving until we get answers. The alien response was immediate and carried a new edge of authority. Earth vessel, you will comply with containment protocols or enforcement measures will be implemented. Elena's hands were shaking as she called out readings from her station. Captain, I'm detecting massive ships materializing around us. They were completely invisible until now, but they're uncloaking. The smallest one is 3 times our size. On the main display, the empty space around the horizon began filling with vessels that materialized as if stepping out of some other dimension. Their designs were utterly alien, geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, constructed from materials that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. Sarah's training kicked in as she assessed their situation. They were surrounded, outgunned, and facing technology centuries beyond anything humanity possessed. But they were also sitting on the most important discovery in human history. Marcus, start recording everything. I want complete sensor logs of every ship, every communication, every piece of data we can gather. If we don't make it back, at least Earth will know the truth. Already on it, Captain. Sarah opened the communication channel again. Unknown vessel. We understand that our presence here is unexpected, but we're not going back to Earth without answers. Our species has the right to know why we've been isolated and what threat we're supposed to pose. You are the last active quarantine zone in this galactic sector, Earth vessel. Previous quarantine species either achieved containment compliance or were subjected to sterilization protocols. The bridge of the horizon fell, completely silent, as the implications sank in. Elena's face had gone white as she processed what they'd just heard. Sterilization protocols, Sarah repeated slowly. You mean you killed them? Sterilization was implemented only when species demonstrated sustained non-compliance with containment measures and posed imminent contamination risks to galactic civilization. Sarah felt rage building in her chest, hot and fierce. An entire galaxy of civilizations had appointed themselves judges and executioners of species they deemed dangerous, without ever giving those species a chance to defend themselves or even understand the charges against them. And what determines noncompliance? What gives you the right to decide which species lives and dies? These protocols were established by unanimous consensus of all galactic civilizations following extensive analysis of contamination events. Your species exhibits the same dangerous cognitive patterns that led to the sterilization of 7 permanent imprisonment, constant surveillance, and fundamental alteration of what made humans human. It was extinction by another name, the slow death of everything that defined their species. Dr. Rodriguez moved closer to Sarah, speaking quietly, so only she could hear. Captain, we can't let them do this. Even if we agree to their terms, they're talking about changing who we are as a species. We'd stop being human. Sarah nodded grimly. She looked around the bridge at her crew, the best and brightest humanity had to offer, people who had dedicated their lives to pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and capability. The thought of surrendering them to alien modification procedures was unbearable. Elena, she called out softly, how many ships are surrounding us? 43 visible vessels, Captain. But based on the energy patterns I'm detecting, there could be hundreds more still cloaked. Sarah made her decision. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing extinction either way. But they were human, and that apparently made them dangerous enough for an entire galaxy to fear them. Open communications. Channel open, Captain. Sarah straightened her shoulders and looked directly at the main display where the alien fleet surrounded them. Unknown. What if the cognitive patterns you fear are the same ones that drove us to build ships like this, to push beyond our solar system, to refuse to accept that we're alone in the universe? Elena looked up from her station with fierce determination in her eyes. Captain, I've been analyzing their ship configurations. They're designed for overwhelming force against technologically inferior opponents, but they're not expecting resistance from someone who understands their capabilities. Sarah kept her attention focused on the communication channel. You see, unknown vessel. You've made the classic mistake of every tyrant in human history. You assumed that fear would make us compliant. But fear doesn't make humans compliant. She turned to look at her crew, seeing the same determination reflected in every face. Fear makes us dangerous. What happened next defied every tactical manual ever written about first contact scenarios. Instead of opening fire on the surrounded human vessel, the alien fleet suddenly began retreating to what appeared to be a safer distance. Captain Sarah Chun watched in amazement as ships 3 times the size of the horizon backed away from her single exploration vessel. Captain, Elena called out from her physics station, her voice filled with confusion and excitement. They're not preparing to attack. They're afraid of us. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from his biological analysis, his face pale with realization. My God, Sarah, what if that's exactly what the quarantine was designed to prevent? What if they're not afraid of what we might do to them physically, but what we might do to their way of thinking? Before Sarah could respond, the communications system crackled back to life. But this time, the voice was different, less processed, more organic, and carrying undertones of what sounded almost like panic. Earth vessel, you will maintain your current position while we consult with the galactic consensus regarding appropriate response protocols. Any aggressive actions will result in immediate sterilization. Sarah noticed the change in terminology. They'd gone from demanding immediate retreat to asking humanity to stay put while they figured out what to do. For beings who claimed to have dealt with 17 other quarantine species, they seemed remarkably unprepared for human responses. Elena, are you detecting any changes in their fleet composition? Elena's fingers flew across her controls as she analyzed the alien formations. Actually, yes. They're bringing in ships I haven't seen before. Larger vessels with completely different energy signatures. And, Captain, I'm detecting incoming faster-than-light signatures from multiple directions. They're calling in reinforcements. Dr. Rodriguez moved to the secondary science station where he'd been analyzing the biological data from the supposedly empty worlds they discovered. Captain, I think I know why they're so frightened of us. Look at this. He activated a holographic display showing comparative analysis between Earth's development patterns and the data they'd gathered about the hidden civilizations in nearby systems. Every species we've detected follows remarkably similar development patterns. They advance technologically at steady, predictable rates. They seem to reach stable population levels and maintain them. Their energy consumption patterns are efficient and sustainable. They value predictability and harmony above individual advancement. Sarah began to understand what made humanity so frightening to the galaxy. And humans make decisions based on competition, individual achievement, risk-taking, and constant pushing of boundaries. We see limitations as challenges to overcome rather than safe boundaries to maintain. From their perspective, we're the equivalent of a virus that spreads chaos and instability wherever it goes. The communication system activated again, interrupting their analysis. This time, multiple voices spoke simultaneously, creating a strange harmony that was both beautiful and unsettling. Earth vessel, we are the Galactic Consensus Emergency Council. Your species' cognitive patterns have been analyzed for over 3 millennia. You exhibit thought processes that are fundamentally incompatible with galactic civilization. Sarah opened a response channel. Emergency Council, we're listening. Explain how our thought processes threaten your civilizations. The harmonized response came quickly. Your species exhibits what we term infectious ambition. When exposed to other civilizations, humans do not adapt to existing systems. Instead, you inspire and corrupt other species to adopt human-like patterns of unlimited growth, resource competition, and technological acceleration. Elena's eyes widened as she processed the implications. They're not afraid we'll attack them. They're afraid we'll change them into something like us. Previous exposure to quarantined species with similar cognitive patterns resulted in the collapse of 17 stable galactic civilizations, the Council continued. Infected species abandoned sustainable development practices, began competing for resources rather than sharing them, and ultimately destroyed themselves through warfare and environmental catastrophe. Dr. Rodriguez looked stunned as he compared this information with human history. Captain, they're describing exactly what humans have done to Earth multiple times throughout our development. We've had resource wars, environmental crises, technological arms races. The only difference is we've managed to survive them and keep advancing. Emergency Council, you mentioned 17 species that were sterilized for exhibiting patterns like ours. What exactly did those species do that convinced you to destroy them? The pause was longer this time, and when the response came, it carried undertones of what might have been regret. The first quarantine species, designated Delta 79, was discovered approximately 50,000 years ago. Initial contact protocols were followed, and cultural exchange was attempted. Within 200 years, every civilization within their local galactic region had abandoned sustainable population controls and begun expanding aggressively into neighboring systems. Sarah felt her breath catch. They spread by example. The infected civilizations began competing for resources, developing increasingly destructive weapons, and pursuing technological advancement without regard for long-term consequences. 3 galactic wars resulted from the expansion, ultimately leading to the extinction of 47 civilizations and the sterilization of over 2,000 worlds. The bridge of the horizon fell silent as the crew absorbed the magnitude of what they were hearing. Humanity's way of thinking hadn't just been deemed dangerous in theory. It had a proven track record of destroying entire galactic civilizations. Dr. Rodriguez spoke quietly to Sarah. That's why they implemented the quarantine protocols. They learned that they couldn't safely interact with species like us without risking the destruction of their entire galactic community. Elena looked up from her station with a mixture of awe and terror in her eyes. Captain, I've been analyzing the energy patterns from their fleet. They're not just here to contain us. They're here to sterilize our entire solar system if necessary. The power levels I'm reading are sufficient to crack planets. Sarah felt the weight of human extinction pressing down on her shoulders. But instead of despair, she felt a familiar human emotion that she now realized was exactly what the galaxy feared: defiance in the face of impossible odds. Emergency Council, she said, reopening the communication channel. I understand your concerns about human cognitive patterns, but you're making a fundamental error in your analysis. The response came quickly, tinged with what might have been curiosity. Explain this error, Earth vessel. Sarah stood and walked to the center of the bridge, feeling the eyes of her crew and the attention of hundreds of alien vessels focused on her words. You assume that chaos and instability are inherently destructive, but you've forgotten something crucial about the universe itself. She gestured toward the viewport where stars blazed against the darkness of space. The universe is built on chaos. Stars are born in violent explosions of gas and dust. Planets form through catastrophic collisions. Life itself evolves through random mutations and environmental pressures. The very forces that created this galaxy are the same chaotic, unpredictable processes you're trying to eliminate. Elena was monitoring the alien fleet's responses to Sarah's words, and her readings showed something unexpected. Captain, Their energy patterns are fluctuating. I think your argument is causing debate among their ships. The Council's response took longer than usual. Earth vessel, your analogy is flawed. Natural chaos and cognitive chaos are different phenomena. Natural processes eventually reach stable states. Human cognitive patterns prevent the achievement of stability. Sarah smiled grimly. Exactly. And that's what makes us valuable, not dangerous. She activated the ship's external displays, showing images from human history. Cities rising from wilderness, technologies advancing from fire to spaceflight, art and music evolving across millennia. You've created a galaxy of stable, predictable civilizations. But stability without growth is stagnation. Predictability without challenge is decay. You've achieved perfect order by sacrificing the very forces that drive advancement and evolution. Dr. Rodriguez joined her at the center of the bridge. Captain's right, Council. We've analyzed the development patterns of your civilizations. You've all reached technological and cultural plateaus and maintained them for millennia. But you've also stopped growing, stopped advancing, stopped reaching for anything beyond what you already have. Elena added her analysis to the argument. Your own ships demonstrate this perfectly. The technology level you're displaying is impressive, but our analysis suggests it's been essentially unchanged for thousands of years. You've achieved stability at the cost of innovation. The communication channel remained silent for several minutes. When the Council finally responded, their harmonized voices carried new undertones of uncertainty. Earth vessel, what you describe as growth and advancement, we define as dangerous instability. Unlimited growth leads to resource depletion and civilizational collapse. Sarah felt the momentum of the argument shifting in humanity's favor. Only if growth is pursued without wisdom. But that's exactly where human chaos becomes valuable. We don't just grow, we adapt. When we face resource limitations, we develop new technologies. When we create environmental problems, we engineer solutions. When we reach the boundaries of one system, we build ships to reach other systems. She paused, letting her words sink in. You've spent 50,000 years trying to prevent the chaos that leads to catastrophic collapse. But you've also prevented the chaos that leads to transcendent breakthrough. You've achieved galactic peace at the cost of galactic potential. Elena was monitoring increasingly frantic communications between the alien vessels. Captain, I'm detecting massive disagreements within their fleet. Some ships are powering down their weapons systems, while others are charging them. I think your argument is causing a schism in their consensus. The Council's next response came fragmented, with different voices speaking simultaneously rather than in harmony. Human cognitive patterns threaten galactic stability. Stability without growth leads to stagnation and eventual extinction. Previous exposure resulted in civilizational collapse. Previous civilizations may have lacked wisdom to guide growth. Sterilization protocols must be maintained. Alternative containment methods should be considered. Sarah realized she was witnessing something unprecedented, a galactic civilization experiencing doubt about decisions they'd considered absolute for 50,000 years. Emergency Council, we propose an alternative to both sterilization and permanent quarantine. The fractured voices fell silent, waiting for her proposal. Limited contact under control conditions. Allow human representatives to interact with volunteers from your civilizations. Monitor the results carefully. If human thinking proves destructive, you can still implement containment. But if it proves beneficial, you might discover that controlled chaos is exactly what your galaxy needs to continue evolving. The silence stretched for long minutes as hundreds of ships maintained their positions around the horizon. Sarah could almost sense the intense debates taking place among beings who had never before questioned their foundational assumptions about stability and growth. Finally, a single voice emerged from the communication system, different from either the original artificial voice or the harmonized council. Earth vessel, you have introduced concepts that require extensive analysis and debate. The galactic consensus has not experienced philosophical disagreement of this magnitude in 15,000 years. Sarah felt a mixture of triumph and terror. They had successfully challenged the galaxy's most fundamental beliefs about the nature of civilization and progress. But they had also potentially destabilized the very foundations of galactic society. "We understand the magnitude of what we're proposing," she replied. "But the alternative, stagnation disguised as stability, leads to eventual extinction just as surely as uncontrolled chaos." The single voice responded with what sounded almost like wonder. "Earth vessel, your species has accomplished something no previous quarantined species achieved. You have forced us to question not just our policies, but our understanding of the universe itself." Elena looked up from her readings with excitement in her eyes. "Captain, something incredible is happening. Ships throughout the fleet are breaking formation. They're not retreating or attacking. They're positioning themselves as if for observation rather than combat." Sarah felt hope building in her chest for the first time since they'd been surrounded. "Are you saying you're willing to consider our proposal?" "We are saying, Earth vessel, that you have demonstrated the very cognitive patterns we feared might be infectious. And for the first time in 50,000 years, we find ourselves curious about the infection rather than terrified of it." 3 days after the initial confrontation, Captain Sarah Chun found herself aboard an alien vessel for the first time in human history. The transport that had come for her was unlike anything humanity had imagined. Organic curves that seemed to flow rather than being constructed, corridors that adjusted their dimensions based on the occupants, and lighting that responded to emotional states with subtle shifts in color and intensity. The being that had requested her presence was equally impossible to categorize. Standing nearly 3 meters tall with crystalline structures that might have been skin or technology, the entity introduced itself as Archive Keeper Zeftio Men, apparently the galactic equivalent of a chief historian and philosopher. "Captain Chun," Zeftio Men said, their voice creating harmonics that seemed to resonate through the ship's structure itself. "In 50,000 years of galactic record-keeping, no quarantine species has ever forced us to reconsider our fundamental assumptions about civilization. Your 3-day presence has created more philosophical debate than the previous millennium combined." Sarah tried to maintain her diplomatic composure, while her mind reeled at the implications of walking through technology that surpassed anything in human imagination. "Archive Keeper, we appreciate your willingness to consider alternatives to sterilization or permanent quarantine." Zeftio Men's crystalline features shifted in what might have been amusement. "You misunderstand the magnitude of what has occurred, Captain. The galactic consensus has not simply agreed to consider alternatives. The consensus itself is fracturing." They led Sarah through corridors that seemed to anticipate their destination, walls flowing apart to create passages and reforming behind them. "For 15,000 years, we have maintained perfect unity of thought regarding quarantine protocols. Yesterday, for the first time in our recorded history, we failed to achieve consensus on a fundamental policy decision." Sarah felt a chill as she realized the scope of what humanity had accidentally triggered. "How many civilizations are we talking about?" "Currently active in our local galactic region? Approximately 47,000 distinct civilizations, representing over 1,200 billion individual beings." Zeftio Men paused before what appeared to be a viewing chamber. "As of 6 hours ago, they are divided into 3 factions regarding humanity's fate." The viewing chamber materialized around them, its walls becoming transparent to reveal a sight that took Sarah's breath away. Thousands of ships from hundreds of different civilizations filled the space around them, arranged in rough groupings that she immediately recognized as the factions Zeftio Men had mentioned. "The Purification Fleet believes humanity should be sterilized according to established protocols," Zeftio Men explained, gesturing toward a group of dark, angular vessels that radiated menace even from a distance. "They represent approximately 37% of the consensus and include the oldest civilizations in our region." Sarah studied the vessels, noting their aggressive designs and the way they maintained perfect formations that spoke of military discipline refined over millennia. The containment assembly argues for enhanced quarantine with permanent monitoring. The archive keeper continued, indicating another group of ships that surrounded the horizon in protective formations. They comprise roughly 28% of the consensus and favor the species that developed the original quarantine technologies. Sarah noticed that these ships were more varied in design, featuring elaborate sensor arrays and what appear to be defensive rather than offensive weapon systems. And the third faction, Zephtamin's crystalline features shifted again, this time in what was unmistakably excitement. The Integration Collective. They believe humanity should be granted full galactic citizenship, and that human cognitive patterns should be studied and potentially incorporated into galactic civilization. Sarah stared at the third group of ships, by far the smallest, representing perhaps 35% of the consensus. But, including vessels of designs she couldn't begin to categorize. Some appeared to be mobile research stations, others looked like massive libraries or universities, and a few resembled nothing so much as works of art given the ability to travel between stars. Integration collective ships began arriving within hours of your philosophical challenge, Zephtamin explained. Species that haven't participated in consensus debates for thousands of years are sending representatives. Civilizations that we assumed had transcended interest in physical reality are manifesting vessels to observe humanity directly. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the implications. Archive Keeper, we never intended to destabilize your galactic civilization. We were simply exploring and seeking answers to our isolation. Captain Chun, you cannot destabilize something that was already stagnant. The galactic consensus achieved our current form of stability through the systematic elimination of all sources of unpredictability and change. We created a galaxy-wide civilization that prioritized harmony over growth, predictability over innovation, and consensus over individual achievement. Zephtamin manipulated controls that Sarah couldn't identify, causing the viewing chamber to display historical records that span millennia. For 15,000 years, we have maintained technological stasis. Our ships are marginally more advanced than those built 10,000 years ago. Our social systems haven't evolved in 20,000 years. Our philosophical understanding of the universe hasn't expanded since we achieved galactic unity. The displays showed civilization after civilization reaching high levels of technological and social development, then maintaining those levels without significant change for vast periods of time. We achieved perfection, Captain Chun, and perfection, we are discovering, is indistinguishable from death. Sarah watched the historical records with growing understanding. You eliminated the chaos that leads to catastrophe, but you also eliminated the chaos that leads to breakthrough. Precisely. And now, for the first time in 50,000 years, the Integration Collective is asking whether our definition of perfection might actually be a form of civilizational suicide. Before Sarah could respond, the Chamber's communication system activated with an incoming priority message. The voice belonged to Dr. Elena Vasquez aboard the Horizon, and it carried notes of excitement and alarm. Captain, you need to return to the ship immediately. We're detecting massive changes throughout the alien fleet, and we're receiving communication requests from over 300 different species. Some of them are asking specifically about human technology. Individual species are simply engaging in philosophical inquiry regarding human cognitive patterns. Negative, Archive Keeper. Philosophical inquiry represents the first stage of contamination. The species in question are exhibiting decreased consensus compliance and increased individual initiative. If these patterns spread, we will lose galactic stability within decades. Sarah moved to the communication controls, hoping she understood them correctly. Battle Commander Thex Vornun, this is Captain Sarah Chun. May I ask what you consider to be the greatest threat from human cognitive patterns? The response came laden with what sounded like millennia of absolute certainty. Your species exhibits uncontrolled curiosity, Captain Shun. You ask questions that other species accept as answered. You challenge assumptions that form the foundation of galactic civilization. You refuse to accept limitations that ensure survival. Sarah felt a flash of insight about the fundamental difference between humans and the galactic civilizations. Battle Commander, what if those limitations you're protecting are actually preventing your species from reaching their full potential? Potential for what, human? Potential for wars like the ones that destroyed 47 civilizations? Potential for environmental collapse like the ones that sterilized 2,000 worlds? Potential for technological arms races that led to the extinction of entire species? Sarah realized she was arguing for the soul of galactic civilization itself. Potential for transcendence. Potential for discoveries that expand the boundaries of what's possible. Potential for growth that doesn't end in destruction because it's guided by wisdom learned through experience. Captain Shun, Zeftiamin interrupted urgently. I'm receiving reports that Integration Collective species are beginning to implement modifications to their social and technological systems based on human examples. The Purification Fleet is interpreting this as confirmation of cognitive contamination. Through the viewing chamber's transparent walls, Sarah could see ships throughout the massive fleet beginning to shift positions. The three factions were separating, and weapon systems were powering up across hundreds of vessels. How long do we have before this turns into active conflict? Sarah asked. Minutes, Captain Shun. The Purification Fleet has authorization to implement sterilization protocols if contamination reaches critical levels. From their perspective, any adoption of human cognitive patterns by galactic species represents critical contamination. Sarah felt the weight of two galactic civilizations balanced on the edge of her next words. On one side lay the stagnant perfection of 50,000 years of stability. On the other lay the chaotic potential of growth guided by wisdom. Zeftai Oemin, can you get me direct communication with representatives from all three factions simultaneously? Yes, but Captain Shun, understand that what you say next will determine not only humanity's fate, but potentially the future of galactic civilization itself. Sarah nodded grimly. Open the channel. The communication system activated, connecting her simultaneously with Battle Commander Thex Vornun of the Purification Fleet, Harmony Coordinator Ben Sharon of the Containment Assembly, and Discovery Leader Zen Talmir of the Integration Collective. Representatives of the Galactic Consensus, Sarah began. You face a choice that will define the next phase of your evolution as a galactic civilization. She manipulated the viewing chamber's controls to display the current positions of the three fleets, showing how they'd arranged themselves for potential conflict. You can choose to eliminate the chaos that threatens your stability, and, in doing so, guarantee that your civilizations will remain exactly as they are for the next 50,000 years. You will have perfect order, perfect predictability, and perfect stagnation. Battle Commander Thex Vornun responded immediately. Perfect stability ensures survival, human. Chaos sur destruction. Or, Sarah continued, you can choose to embrace controlled chaos, the kind of unpredictability that drives growth, innovation, and the expansion of possibilities. Yes, there are risks, but there are also opportunities for breakthroughs that your species have never imagined. Discovery Leader Zen Talmir's harmonics carried excitement. The human presents compelling arguments for evolutionary advancement, but the risks of civilizational collapse remain significant. Harmony Coordinator Ben Sharon added their perspective. Perhaps compromise solutions exist that preserve stability while allowing limited experimental advancement. Sarah felt the moment balanced on the edge between galactic war and galactic renaissance. There's a third option, she said quietly. Instead of choosing between perfect order and dangerous chaos, what if you chose guided evolution? All three faction leaders went silent, waiting for her explanation. Establish controlled environments where volunteer civilizations can experiment with human-influenced cognitive patterns. Monitor the results carefully. Learn from both successes and failures. Use that knowledge to guide gradual, wisdom-based advancement throughout your galaxy. Sarah paused, knowing that her next words would echo through galactic history. Don't choose between stagnation and chaos. Choose conscious evolution. 10 years after the UES Horizon's historic journey into forbidden space, Captain Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of humanity's first interstellar embassy, watching ships from 47,000 civilizations arrive for the Galactic Evolution Summit. The structure itself was a testament to what conscious evolution could achieve, a massive station that existed simultaneously in normal space and 11 different dimensional phases, allowing species with radically different environmental needs to interact safely. The decades since first contact had transformed not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. The compromise solution Sarah had proposed, guided evolution through controlled experimentation, had sparked the greatest period of advancement in galactic history since the establishment of the original consensus 50,000 years earlier. Captain Dr. Elena Vasquez approached from the embassy's physics laboratories, her hair now completely silver, but her eyes bright with the excitement of discoveries that came daily in their new reality. The preliminary reports from integration zones are extraordinary. 17 civilizations have successfully incorporated modified human cognitive patterns without experiencing social collapse. Sarah smiled as she reviewed the data Elena presented. The integration zones have been the galaxy's answer to the risk of uncontrolled contamination. Carefully monitored regions of space, where volunteer civilizations could experiment with human-influenced thinking while being observed and supported by both galactic experts and human advisors. What about the failures? Sarah asked, knowing that honest assessment of both successes and problems had been crucial to maintaining the support of the containment assembly. 3 civilizations experienced temporary social disruption when they attempted to adopt competitive individualism without also developing cooperative frameworks, Elena reported. But with guidance from human advisors and galactic social engineers, they've successfully stabilized and are now showing accelerated innovation rates. Dr. James Rodriguez emerged from another section of the embassy, carrying reports from the biological integration experiments. At 62, he moved more slowly than he had aboard the Horizon, but his mind remained as sharp as ever. Sarah, you need to see what's happening with the Zephyrian Collective. They've combined human creative chaos with their natural telepathic unity, and the results are... He paused, searching for adequate words. Captain Shun, I bring greetings from the Archive Worlds, and a request that may interest you, Zeftiomen said. Their harmonics now, including frequencies that created synesthetic experiences of color and emotion. We have been analyzing the historical records of the 17 quarantined species that were sterilized before humanity. We believe we may have been premature in our actions. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. What do you mean? Examination of preserved cultural artifacts and philosophical writings suggest that several of those species might have developed stable integration solutions given more time and guidance. We eliminated civilizations that might have contributed unique perspectives to galactic evolution. Elena looked up from her data analysis. Are you suggesting that the galaxy made a mistake in implementing sterilization protocols? Zeftiomen's form pulsed with colors that conveyed complex emotions. We are suggesting that fear of chaos prevented us from recognizing the potential benefits of guided change. The integration zones have demonstrated that chaotic cognitive patterns can be successfully integrated with stable social structures. Sarah walked to the embassy's battle commander Thexwarnoon materialized through the military communication interface. Their species form evolved beyond its original design through voluntary integration of human persistence patterns and galactic engineering wisdom. Where once they had been creatures of rigid military discipline, they had become something like living strategic poetry, beautiful, deadly, and impossibly creative. Captain Shun, the Purification Collectives have completed analysis of integration zone data. Our previous assessment was incomplete, Thexwarnoon admitted, their new form pulsing with harmonics that conveyed what might have been embarrassment. Chaotic cognitive patterns, when properly guided, produce advancement rates 17 times faster than traditional stable development. Sarah felt dizzy as she processed what the former leader of the purification fleet was saying. You're abandoning the sterilization protocols? We are recommending systematic implementation of guided chaos throughout galactic civilization. The risks of stagnation now appear greater than the risks of controlled instability. Harmony Coordinator Bencharon joined the conversation from their mobile research platform. Their form now incorporating crystalline thinking matrices that allowed simultaneous processing of millions of variables. Captain Chun, the containment assembly has reached similar conclusions. Containment as a permanent solution appears to lead inevitably to civilizational death through stagnation. Elena was frantically taking notes on the conversation. So all three factions now support some form of integration approach. Discovery leader Zen Talmir's voice joined from the integration collective ships. More than support, Dr. Vasquez. We are proposing systematic transformation of galactic civilization based on human-inspired conscious evolution principles. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were discussing. What would that involve? Situation ansvaret. Gradual implementation of guided chaos protocols throughout all galactic civilizations. Introduction of control competition, individual achievement incentives, and boundary-pushing research programs. Resurrection of sterilized species as advisors and participants in the evolution process. And establishment of humanity as the primary guides for galactic evolutionary development. Thexwarnun added. Your species has demonstrated unique capability for balancing creative destruction with constructive wisdom. We're special because we've learned how to be both chaotic and stable, both competitive and cooperative, both destructive and constructive. She activated displays showing human history, wars and peace treaties, environmental destruction and restoration, technological disasters, and breakthroughs. We've made every mistake you're afraid of making. We've fought resource wars, collapsed civilizations through environmental damage, and nearly destroyed ourselves with technological weapons. But instead of letting those failures stop us, we learned from them. Elena joined Sarah at the viewing chamber. What the captain is saying is that human wisdom isn't innate. It's earned through experience, including the experience of failure. Dr. Rodriguez added his perspective. If you want to learn how to balance chaos and stability, you need to be willing to fail sometimes. Perfect safety prevents both catastrophic failure and transcendent success. Zephthioamen's form shifted through patterns of contemplation. You are suggesting that the 47 civilizations we lost to chaos might have eventually developed their own wisdom if given sufficient time and support, and that the price of preventing those losses has been 50,000 years of galactic stagnation, Sarah confirmed. You eliminated the chaos that leads to collapse, but you also eliminated the chaos that leads to transcendence. Thexvornun's strategic harmonics created complex patterns in the air. Captain Chun, if galactic civilization implements guided chaos protocols, we risk massive disruptions, potential conflicts, and possible civilizational failures. Sarah nodded solemnly. Yes, you do. But you also open the possibility of breakthroughs that could transform your understanding of the universe itself. The question is whether you believe the potential for transcendence is worth the risk of failure. The alien representatives fell silent, processing the implications of conscious choice between safety and growth, between predictable stagnation and uncertain evolution. Finally, Discovery leader Zen Talmir spoke. Captain Chun, the Integration Collective has reached consensus. We choose conscious evolution, with full awareness of the risks and full commitment to learning from both successes and failures. Harmony Coordinator Bencharon's response came immediately after. The containment assembly concurs. We choose guided transformation over guaranteed stagnation. Battle Commander Thexvornun was silent for long minutes before responding. The Purification Collectives choose life over safety. We choose the risk of failure over the certainty of unchanging existence. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she realized what they had accomplished. Not just first contact between humanity and galactic civilization, but the fundamental transformation of how an entire galaxy thought about growth, change, and the nature of existence itself. "Then, let's begin," she said simply. Elena was already pulling up implementation plans developed over years of integration zone experiments. "We'll start with volunteer civilizations in established integration zones, then gradually expand as we develop better understanding of successful integration techniques." Rodriguez activated communication links with Earth, where human advisors were preparing to disperse throughout the galaxy. "We'll need to train thousands of human guides and integrate them with galactic social engineers and evolutionary specialists." Zeftioamin began coordination with the archive worlds for resurrection protocols for the 17 extinct species. "We will begin with the most recently sterilized civilization and work backward, learning from each resurrection attempt." As plans took shape around her, Sarah walked back to the viewing chamber and watched the ships of 47,000 civilizations beginning to organize themselves for the greatest evolutionary project in galactic history. The universe was about to become a far more chaotic, dangerous, and wonderful place. She activated her personal communication link to Earth, where her message would be broadcast to the 8 billion humans who had waited 10 years to learn the outcome of their species' first contact with alien civilization. "This is Captain Sarah Chun, broadcasting from Galactic Integration Station Alpha. I'm pleased to report that humanity has officially been welcomed as a full member of galactic civilization." She paused, watching alien ships whose designs defied human understanding preparing for transformation that would change the nature of existence throughout the galaxy. "But more than that, we've been asked to serve as guides for the conscious evolution of 47,000 civilizations toward forms of existence that none of us can yet imagine." Sarah smiled as she concluded her message to humanity. "It turns out that what made the galaxy afraid of us, our refusal to accept limitations, our willingness to risk failure for the possibility of transcendence, our stubborn insistence that growth is worth the dangers it brings, is exactly what the galaxy needs to continue evolving." She looked out at the magnificent chaos of ships representing species beyond imagination, all preparing to risk their perfect safety for the uncertain promise of becoming something greater than they had ever dreamed possible. The galaxy acted as if Earth didn't exist because they were afraid we would change them. They were right to be afraid, and they were right that we would change them. Sarah's final words echoed through space toward the small blue world that had launched her on this impossible journey. "And now, together, we're going to change the universe itself." In the depths of space, automated beacons that had broadcast warnings about the quarantine zone around Sol for 3,000 years received new programming. Instead of warning travelers to avoid the third planet from an unremarkable yellow star, they now broadcast a different message. Solar System Sol 3. Classification: Origin point of conscious evolution protocols. Status: Active Galactic Integration Center. Welcome, all species seeking guided transformation beyond current limitations. The galaxy no longer acted as if Earth didn't exist. Instead, it looked to Earth as the source of something it had forgotten was possible. Hope for a future beyond the boundaries of everything it had previously dared to imagine.